everybody, welcome back. My name is Morgan. This is my channel, Pisces Paperbacks, and today we're going to be talking about all the books I read in December. That's right, we have made it to the final wrap-up of 2020. Generally, it was a pretty good reading month. 9 of the books I'm going to talk about very briefly because I read them for the Romance Takeover Readathon, which happened for the first 2 weeks of December, and I vlogged those, so those vlogs will be linked in the description, but I'm very excited to talk about everything else I read with you. Before we dive in, I do want to let everybody know that my 2020 wrap-up videos are going to be starting on January 2nd, and then I'm basically just going to be posting one every other day, so every even day of January until I like run out of video ideas. I think right now I have like 6 videos, so it's going to be worst of 2020, best of 2020, favorite authors, ranking all the 5-star reads, ranking every romance that I read, a statistics video, and I think that's everything right now. But please let me know if you want me to do a favorite fiction and a favorite nonfiction list, or if you just want to do me to do like a favorite overall books of the year list. I'm having trouble deciding, and I haven't made any lists. I haven't filmed anything yet, so there's still time to let me know. Please let me know like in the next 3 days. Do you want one list or 2? Up to you. The first book I read this month was Vivid by Beverly Jenkins. This is a historical romance following a female doctor named Rebekah who moves to a small town in Michigan to become the doctor for this town. And when the mayor meets her, he's like, "You can't be the doctor, you're a woman." So the book is basically their relationship developing, the respect developing between them, and then Rebekah becoming kind of part of the fabric of the community. This was definitely my favorite of the 3 Beverly Jenkins books that I read this year. I really liked the characters the most. I liked their dynamic a lot. It was really cute. I think I can decidedly say 3 books in that I just don't love how Beverly Jenkins writes her sex scenes, and for all 3 books I have felt like the external conflict there either wasn't any, or it's introduced like really too late into the plot of the book, or too late in the book for it to be really an interesting projector, like projecting me through to the end of the book. I don't know if that makes any sense. I give the book 3 stars. Up next, I read Temptation and Surrender by Stephanie Lawrence. This is another historical romance. I'm a bit predictable. There will be more on this list, but this is a Regency romance following Jonas, who has just taken control of the largest estate in this town, and Emily, who has come to this town with her younger siblings in search for a lost family treasure. So in order to have like a cover story, she gets a job as the innkeeper in this town, and the inn is owned by Jonas, and I really loved their chemistry. For me, this book, like, the plot was fine, like it was interesting, it was fine, but for me, the thing that I really loved about this book was the chemistry between them and just the large number of scenes between them, because they have their first kiss on page 60, and then they basically have a makeout scene every 10 pages until like page 200, and then they have a sex scene, and then they have a sex scene like every 20 pages until the end of the book, but like not in a way that feels I'm making it sound excessive, but I just really liked that in historical romance, because while I do tend to fall on the, like, on a scale of like 5 stars, 1 being like no sex scenes and 5 being like fully just erotica, I tend to fall in preferring like between a 3 and a 4, and this I think was a really good example of like a 4 on that scale, if that makes any sense. 4 stars for this one. Next, I read The Lady in the Mirror by Judith Arnold. This is a fairly old Harlequin romance that is a contemporary, and it's about ex-cop Clint, who's in LA looking for his runaway sister, and Jesse, who is the owner of a shelter for runaway teens in LA. And like, blanket statement, I didn't enjoy this. I thought the plot was like pretty weird. Most of the book is just spent looking for his sister. There's one sex scene, and I actually like quite liked the sex scene. I thought it was well done, but I didn't like either character that much. There's a really weird paranormal element where there's like a ghost in the mirror in his apartment, but like it never really gets resolved. There's no explanations given, which is very odd, and I just didn't really like it. 2 stars. Up next, I read Radiance by Grace Draven, and this is a fantasy romance about the prince of a fantastical race and the niece of the human king, and they are put into an arranged marriage to like solidify the treaty and cooperation between their 2 species, and I really enjoyed this book. The thing about this is that it's an arranged marriage, like trope, but it's also like friends to lovers, because something about the two races, I don't remember what like the fantasy race is, but they and humans find the opposite race like really ugly to the point of like repulsion almost. So when the newlyweds meet the first time, they're like, we're just gonna like be chill about this, and then they like become friends and bond and then fall in love and then find each other sexy and then like have sex, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well done. Oh, and I give that one 4 stars as well. Next, I listened to the audiobook of Set by Alexandria House, and this is an like 80-page long erotic novella. It is like mostly sex scenes, but like really ridiculous sex scenes, almost to the point of like, this is just, it's unrealistic, but it was really fun. I liked the characters. You know, the plot was good enough, so I don't really think it was that good, so I want to give it a 2, but I did have fun, so like 2.5. I don't know, that works. And then I listened to Rafe by Rebekah Weatherspoon, and this is a buff nanny romance. So Rafe is a male nanny who starts working for, I don't remember her name, but she is a black doctor in LA, I think, who has twin daughters. And it's just like the romance between them. I really like the discussions of like consent in regards to a relationship between an employer and an employee, and like the dynamics within there. I really liked like the antagonist, like not liking the antagonist, I thought he was a douchebag, but I really liked the plot surrounding that. I thought it was a good emotional climax of the book, and I just liked this one. I thought it was fun, and it was my 3rd Rebekah Weatherspoon that I've read this year, which really cemented for me that like she's a winner. She's a winner. That one got 4 stars. And then up next, I actually listened to the audiobook of Surrender to the Highlander by Lynsay Sands. This is a Scottish Highlander historical romance about Edith Drummond, who has been poisoned, and Niels Buchanan, who is one of the brothers who like comes in to check on her, like comes to her castle to check on her, but then they're like, she's been poisoned. And he kind of takes it upon himself to protect her and investigate, and they fall in love. This is a hard one for me because overall I really enjoyed the tone and the humor and the writing. Like I thought this was just like really fun and funny and romantic. Like I vibed with it. And then I really hated the ending. Like not the ending with the relationship between the characters, but the ending of like the conclusion of the poisoning plot. Like I really disliked it. And it kind of like tainted the book for me. I don't know, like I want to give it a 3.5, but I just like, when I think about this book, I remember that like chapter at the end where I was just like so disappointed. So I don't know. I'm gonna read more in this series because I do like the author, and I liked the general concept of like the books each follow a different brother, but yeah, not as much of a winner as I would have hoped. Next, I read Running Hot by Jayne and Krentz. This was a reread of a favorite romance for the Romance Takeover Readathon, and this follows Luther and Grace as they are investigating like a psychic bad guy. So in this universe, there are people who have psychic abilities, and they are members of something called the Arcane Society. So this follows Luther and Grace, who are each aura talents, but in like different ways, as they're sent by like the psychic investigative agency to see if a particular bad guy is going to be at this one hotel, and then they kind of get swept up into a larger conspiracy. I am giving this book 5 stars, but I think it is objectively not as good as I feel about it. I just like it. I just like the dynamic between the characters. I like the way their powers complement each other. And I do think that it takes a very strange turn in terms of like the antagonist, and how there's kind of a secondary plot that comes out of nowhere. Very strange, but I like their chemistry, and I like their relationship, and I like this book. So what could I say? Then I listened to Lover Enshrined by J.R. Ward. This is, I believe, the 6th Black Dagger Brotherhood book, and this follows the romance, like the main romance is between Fury and Cormia. I was pretty disappointed in this book, honestly. I gave it 3 stars, and that's because I really liked this, like the main subplot that is going on with the secondary characters in this book. I really like John Matthew, I really like Quinn, I really like Blay. I think they're all really interesting, and I especially am invested in setting the groundwork for Blay and Quinn and their future romance, because I know that they eventually get together, but this is book 6. I don't think they get together until like book 16 or something like that, and it's just like, oh my god. So I really enjoyed all of their character work, but I really, really disliked the Fury and Cormia sections. I feel like they barely get any scenes together. Cormia like barely has a personality. Fury is high most of the time. He was so frustrating for so much of the book. This one was not my favorite, probably my least favorite one that I've read so far. Then I read the ebook of Tunnel of Bones by Victoria Schwab, which is the second book in the Cassidy Blake series, which follows Cassidy, a 12-year-old girl who can see ghosts after a near-death experience that she experienced like probably a year prior to the book. And this is the second book. So the premise of the series is that Cassidy's parents are paranormal investigators, and they don't know that she can see ghosts, but they get the opportunity to film like a most haunted cities paranormal tour type show, and the first episode is in Edinburgh. So the first book takes place in Edinburgh, and the second book, or the second episode, takes place in Paris. So the second book takes place in Paris, and obviously the catacombs become a part of this ghostly story. And I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars, but I liked the first one better. I felt like this one felt more like, obviously it's written for middle grade, so different pacing expectations, different like character development expectations, but I really felt that with the exception of the very end portion of the second book, I felt like the first book did way more in terms of character development for Cassidy and Jacob, her ghost best friend, whereas this second book was very focused on action and moving the plot forward really fast, which was still fun and interesting, and I enjoyed it. Like, I read the whole book in like one night. I really missed those like softer character moments from the first book, if that makes sense, although there was like a friendship moment at the end of Tunnel of Bones that made me legitimately tear up. Next, I read Rapt, which is a Christmas romance novella by Rebekah Weatherspoon again, and this one follows, I don't remember their characters' names, but a woman who got divorced a couple years ago and is just starting to get back into the dating game. I think she's in her early 30s, and when she signs up for this dating app, she matches with someone that she used to work with at a former job who was in like the tech department, and she always thought was really cute. And he, from his perspective, had a huge crush on her, but she had been married and, you know, wasn't really appropriate, and they weren't like really close friends. They were just like casual work acquaintances. So this is kind of like him being like, oh my god, it's my shot at this girl that I've had a crush on for years. I really liked the relationship. It was really cute. So much good communication between them. Even though there still is a miscommunication plot point at the end, I really enjoyed this book. Except, okay, I feel kind of bad because I think the main character of this book is supposed to have a lot of like anxiety, like relationship anxiety, and a lot of kind of circular thoughts about like what's going to go wrong. And I think that it could be really relatable to some people. And I feel bad saying this, I found her very frustrating at some points because she kept, like I said, just like thinking herself in circles, like into a hole. And I know that they're gonna get together. It's a romance novella. So with that perspective in mind, especially also having his perspective and knowing that he's all in and she doesn't need to be having these thoughts, it was just very frustrating for me. So this one was like 3 stars. Okay, now we're going to talk about The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V. Schwab. This is my 4th Victoria Schwab book. So Darker Shade of Magic, City of Ghosts, Tunnel of Bones, Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. And I think this one is my 3rd favorite. So Darker Shade of Magic is probably my least favorite. I don't know how I feel about this book. So basically this is, and you've definitely heard about it, but it follows Addie LaRue, who was a girl growing up in the south of France, and in 1714 she is meant to marry this man that she does not love, and she just wants to be free, she wants to live her life, so she makes a deal with a dark god to be free and have more time. But the catch is that no one remembers her, so she'll live forever, but she'll never be able to make a mark. She'll never be able to build relationships or find any stability in her life. She's always going to be forgotten. And then 300 years later, in 2014, she meets a boy in a bookstore who remembers her, and his name is Henry. And on the one hand, I thought parts of this book were pretty boring, but on the other hand, I thought it was really relatable, like the desires of the characters. Addie just wants to be free, she wants to live her life, and Henry just wants to be enough for people. And I feel like those are like the two things that anybody really wants, like everybody really wants that. So when we were learning about each of the characters' motivations, I felt really close to them. So like in the beginning of the book with Addie, I felt really close to her. And then towards the end, when we start getting more from Henry's perspective, I felt really close with him. But the sections that weren't really focusing on building up their characters as people, I just felt very disconnected from. Specifically Addie, I felt like she didn't have that much personality. It was a very weird reading experience because I cried, but I also hated the epilogue. I don't really know. So I give that one a 3.5. I was honestly thinking about giving it 4 stars, but the book that I finished the next day, I felt very similar to as well, but stronger, so I'm giving that one 4 stars. Then none of this is making sense. 3.5 stars for Addie LaRue. Hello, so I'm editing this video a bit later with my cat keeping me company, and I just feel like I had things to say about Addie LaRue that I just forgot to say. So first of all, I did really like the running motif of art and the impact of art and inspiration, and how ideas are more important than memories, or ideas are stronger than memory, and the importance of creative outlets. I really liked that. It kind of reminded me of The Starless Sea, and that The Starless Sea is about about stories and the impact on our life, but not as good, not as well done for me. And then the second thing is that I actually really liked the writing style. It was very lyrical. It kind of felt silky to me, silky to listen to, because I listened to the audiobook for this one. So I did really like the audiobook, and the narrators did a great job, but I have seen some reviewers say that they didn't like the overly, not lyrical, but she really focuses a lot on metaphor and not like the rule of 3, but repetition and almost rhyming patterns. But I think because I listened to it and like heard it, it felt like more natural. The book really flowed well. That's what I'm trying to say. And then the next day I finished Things in Jars by Jess Kidd. Let me get that. So this is a Victorian detective mystery about Bridie Devine, and she has been hired to look for the kidnapped daughter of a baronet, I don't know, some guy. And this daughter had been a secret, no one knew about her, and she might have some interesting capabilities or characteristics that would make her very interesting for certain collectors of people. It's very strange, and there's kind of a magical twist, because in the very first chapter, Bridie meets a ghost named Ruby Doyle, and he kind of becomes her Watson, her companion to bounce out ideas off of and banter with. The writing of this book is really stylized. So if you open up the book and you read the first couple pages and you're immediately like, I don't like this, you're not gonna like the book. That's just the fact of the matter. But it's a very clever, cheeky, overly done Victorian style. So it's really not overwritten, but I could definitely see how some people would feel that way. Lots of descriptions. I think the atmosphere, the grungy Victorian atmosphere of this really comes through. I think the weakest aspect of this is probably the characters. For some reason, they all, despite the fact that you really do get to know Bridie and Ruby and a bunch of the side characters, they all feel like they're kind of being held emotionally at an arm's length from the reader. You really aren't getting into their heads or into their emotions the way that you do with more modern books, because this is a book that it came out in 2019, but it was written to be in the style of those Victorian detective mysteries, so it's a bit colder emotionally. That being said, I fucking cried at the end of this because of a certain relationship, and the outcome of that relationship. Like, I cried, and then I kept thinking about it, and I kept crying. 4 stars. I feel very weird about this because as I was reading, I was like, I like this intellectually, but I'm not really invested emotionally. And then I got to the end and I was like, nope, never mind. So 4 stars. And then lastly, the last book I'm gonna read in 2020. I'm like halfway through 2 more books that I actually started this month, but I'm not gonna finish them today. I don't feel like reading any more today, so this is the last book of 2020 for me, and it is I'm Still Here by Austen Channing Brown. So this is a very short, under 200 page essay collection, almost memoir, by a Black woman who kind of discusses what it was like to have been purposely given the name of a white man by her parents to kind of get her through the door when she was applying for jobs. And so she talks about that experience as a child and learning about her own Blackness, and then she talks about her experience being a Black woman in the workplace as an adult and kind of microaggressions and what those experiences are like. I really liked this book. I'm gonna give it like 4 stars. I really liked her discussions about faith. I am not Christian or Catholic or any type of like Jesus religion, but Austen is. She's not very religious, but she's religious, and I really liked how she kind of incorporated her faith and her relationship with God into these essays and into her experiences. And I think I think it could be relatable to anyone, no matter what their faith was. So I really liked how she wrote about that, and just generally, I thought this was an excellent book. So I definitely ended on a good note. Okay, we made it to the end. We made it to the end of 2020. I'm very excited. I really liked the books that I read this month, although I haven't had a 5-star since October, which kind of sucks, but I just had a good time, and I feel like I've done a pretty good job this year with like keeping up with everything and reading and liking the books that I'm reading. And I want to thank you for coming along with me, even though you're gonna see me in 2 days from when I post this video, which is posting it later today. So it's just very nice. And remember to let me know if you want one favorites video or a fiction and nonfiction favorites video, 2 of them, because I haven't decided, and I'm like, will that make it easier to decide what my favorites are? I don't know. Alright, I will see you guys very soon, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye!